Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you with us because today we're traveling way back to the 6th century BC to unpack a story of just unimaginable resilience and massive historical magnitude. We're going to be looking at the life and the really incredible spiritual journey of Jain Sadhvi Chandanbala. Now, this is the story of a woman who literally fell from the very highest peaks of society down to its absolute lowest depths, only to rise back up to a totally unprecedented level of spiritual leadership.
Just take a second and think about the number 36,000. That's like filling an entire baseball stadium. Well, over 2,500 years ago, that staggering figure was the exact number of female monastics, or sadhvis, guided and managed by a single female spiritual leader. In an ancient world where female leadership on that massive scale was, well, pretty much unheard of, Sadhvi Chandanbala commanded this enormous spiritual order. So how in the world did she get there? Let's explore. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. A princess becomes a slave. The fall of Chandanbala. To truly understand the leader she became, we first have to understand the absolute tragedy that forged her. Honestly, her origin story is just as extraordinary as it is heartbreaking. The contrast here is incredibly drastic. You see, she wasn't just anyone. She was actually born the royal princess of Champa, in an area we know today as Bhagalpur, in Bihar. Born to King Dadivahana and Queen Darini, she lived a life of absolute royalty. But things took a really dark turn. When she grew up, her kingdom was brutally invaded by a rival king. Just like that, she went from being a pampered princess to a captive. She was captured, completely stripped of her royalty, and literally sold as a slave. Her brand new reality was governed by this cruel master who kept her locked up in heavy chains and actively starved her. Going from a palace to a dark, starved captivity, it's just an unimaginable fall. Yet amazingly, this exact period of profound suffering actually became the crucial catalyst for her spiritual awakening. Right at the absolute peak of her physical suffering, a miraculous intersection occurs. Section 2. Meeting Bhagwan Mahaveer, the intersection of suffering and penance. Let's introduce the parallel spiritual journey of Bhagwan Mahaveer, who was deep in meditation and penance at the exact same time. While Chandana was suffering in chains, he was practicing this intense fasting in silence. Months go by. After an absolutely astounding 5 months and 25 days of continuous fasting without a single bite of food, he decided it was finally time to accept an offering. But there was a catch. He set a really strict, almost impossible condition. He would only break his fast by accepting food from a person who was completely free from bondage and completely pure of heart. Days kept passing, and there was absolutely no candidate who met this extraordinary spiritual criteria. And this brilliantly illustrates the turning point of our whole story. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. You have Chandana being starved by her cruel master. Then you have Mahaveer seeking an offering from someone pure of heart. Finally, their paths cross. The pure-hearted enslaved Chandana takes whatever humble food she has, which the sources tell us was boiled lentils, specifically masoor dal, and she offers it to him. Bhagwan Mahaveer accepts this food from her hands and breaks his 5.5-month fast. And miraculously, her chains just break. This is an incredibly powerful symbol of liberation. The physical chains falling away represent the ultimate breaking of her karmic and spiritual bondage.
Following this miraculous encounter, Chandana's life completely transforms once again. But, this time it's not a descent into captivity, it is a massive ascent into profound spiritual leadership. Section 3. Leading 36,000 sadhvis, liberation and leadership.
She took Diksha, the formal initiation into the monastic life, directly from Bhagwan Mahaveer himself. In doing so, she became his very first female disciple. She received a new, highly revered title, Arya Chandanbala. And with this new identity, she began her totally unprecedented rise to become the very first woman leader in the Jain Sangha, heading up the entire female order.
So how did she successfully lead that massive group of 36,000 sadhvis we talked about at the beginning? Well, she did it by strictly embodying and teaching some core spiritual tenets. Just like all Jains, she practiced rigorous nonviolence, truth, non-attachment, and chastity. She didn't just enforce these rules, though. She lived them. She instilled these exact practices into the massive order of sadhvis under her leadership, guiding them through her own shining example of discipline.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that we are shifting our focus from her historical actions to her enduring legacy of thought. Section 4. Teachings on Endurance and Forgiveness. Wisdom from the Texts.
Her brilliant spiritual guidance was just far too important to be lost to history. Her dialogues, her glory, and her teachings were meticulously recorded and preserved in ancient Jain scriptures. Specifically, the source material points to the Avasaika Nirukti and the Kalpa Sutra. These texts basically ensure that her voice and her hard-earned wisdom could guide future generations for millennia to come.
Let's look closely at one of the central philosophies preserved from her legacy. True liberation lies in inner freedom, not outer status. Think about the sheer weight of those words coming from her specific life experience. Her journey from a pampered princess to an abused slave proves unequivocally that worldly status does not dictate your inner purity. You can be a royal in a palace and be spiritually lost, or you can be a captive in chains and be completely spiritually liberated. And then there's this profound piece of wisdom. Endurance through suffering with purity of heart results in forgiveness, even towards the oppressor. I really want you to reflect on the power of this mindset. Honestly, she had every right to harbor deep, bitter hatred for the cruel master who chained and starved her, right? Yet her purity of heart allowed her this incredible capacity to forgive him. It wasn't about excusing his actions, it was about freeing her own soul from the heavy burden of resentment. This remarkable ability to forgive, to endure without losing her inner purity, paved the way for ultimate spiritual triumph. Let's transition into the final chapter of her extraordinary life. Section 5, her timeless spiritual legacy, achieving Kevala Jnana.
Before leaving her physical body, the sources tell us she achieved a state known as Kevala Jnana. For those who might not know, that means complete enlightenment and absolute knowledge. She reached this ultimate pinnacle of spiritual evolution shortly before Bhagwan Mahaveer himself left his body. She completely finished her journey.
Because of that profound spiritual triumph, her legacy is actively alive today. She isn't just some historical footnote. Sadhvi Chandanbala is deeply revered across both the Swetambara and Digambara traditions. Millions of people in Bharat and beyond remember her during the annual Mahaveer Jayanti celebrations, and even more intimately, she is remembered every single day during the daily Pratikramana Sutra prayers. Her impact is constant and deeply embedded in daily spiritual life.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If an unjustly chained captive, totally starved and stripped of her royalty, could somehow find the pure heart to forgive her cruel oppressor, what chains of resentment are you holding on to? And more importantly, what chains can you break today? Think about that for a bit. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the incredible life of Arya Chandanbala. Keep learning, keep reflecting, and I'll see you in the next explainer.